What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Sharkbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they are heating up once again, and the headlines are all surrounding one thing, and that is a wide receiver trade. We went Brandon Ayuk, Devontae Adams, a little hint, a little splash of Cortland Sutton, John Mechie, Tim Patrick. Latest, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, all on the docket for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a new one has emerged. That name is Cooper Kupp. And we will dive into what sources are telling me just before we got on this show. Nick, it's a gorgeous one here in the Berg. On top of some wide receiver talk, it's power rankings day, and we got some massive shakeups, so I'm very excited for that one. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm ready to be hurt again, Noah. I am ready to be hurt once again. Woke up to the news this morning that DeAndre Hopkins was going to the Kansas City Chiefs and just said,
yes,
of course he is, because the Steelers were supposed to be the next team to get a wide receiver, but the Chiefs is the Chiefs, and they wanted a receiver, so they got a receiver. The Steelers reportedly want a receiver, and we'll talk about it, but I'm ready to be hurt again in the case of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, this is, look, we could talk DeAndre Hopkins, we could talk Devontae Adams, you could talk Brandon Ayuk, and you could make an argument that the Pittsburgh Steelers would have been better off with some than others. And, if we're going to be real, we'll stack them up, and this one probably stands very close to the top. And if it's not for some injuries as of late, I would say the top of the list. But here we are, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cooper Kupp. Before we came on this show, I spoke to a team source, league source, that said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely in on Cooper Kupp, and they view Cooper Kupp as their best option. Why? Because Cooper Kupp is a guy that, quote unquote, is a plug and play player that will come into Pittsburgh, immediately make an impact for this offense, become somebody that if he shows up on Thursday, he plays on Sunday, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have no worries about his production. He makes the entire offense better. He is a person that the Pittsburgh Steelers can rely on as a wide receiver 1B next to George Pickens. And on top of that, he lacks something that most other wide receivers, especially those we have talked about as trade candidates, lack. And that is any drama whatsoever. The Steelers view Cooper Kupp as a guy that will come in here, follow suit, fit in very well with the culture and with Mike Tomlin and company, especially with Russell Wilson now a quarterback, and cause no issues no matter what his role is, even though the Pittsburgh Steelers expect that role to be pretty big. They view this as a guy that they could go out and get. They are willing to actually pay a little bit more when it comes to compensation for a guy like Cooper Kupp, because they view him as somebody that comes with no drama, no issues whatsoever, and that could come in here to Pittsburgh, make some noise immediately, and go from there. The Pittsburgh Steelers are, quote unquote, absolutely in on Cooper Kupp. That comes from sources just before this show, and we came on today, the topic of conversation, and I always believe, you guys know me, dude. I'm a guy that everything happens for a reason. The signs are always there. That's why I lose bets. That's why I win bets. That's why you do things like hold off the conversation of wide receivers until today, because yesterday me and Nick are talking, going, what are we going to talk about on the podcast? And he drops, well, what about wide receivers? And I say, we'll hold that till tomorrow. Kind of feels like we held that for tomorrow for a specific reason now. And that reason was that, well, this interest is real, and now we have something to talk about other than what does Cooper Kupp cost, and what would you give up for that conversation? I'll ask you this, because I have the numbers. I have the trade package that I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers would be willing to give up for Cooper Kupp, and I want to dive into all that. But this is, I just dropped this on you moments before we went live. I said, hey, first thing I said when I got on, I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely in on Cooper Kupp. I told you to check out the headline of the podcast. So this is new news to you as well. I want your original reaction, or your initial reaction, to the Pittsburgh Steelers being in on Cooper Kupp.
Well, for them being interested, I'll say the same thing that everybody has said to you over the past 8 weeks plus is water wet. Yeah, the Steelers should be interested in a receiver because they've been interested in a receiver this entire time. And Cooper Kupp, a guy who, injuries aside, is one of the top receivers in the league, should obviously be on their radar if he is available, which indeed it seems like he is available. Now, the injuries is the one thing that concerns me, but here's the thing. When he's healthy, which all reports indicate that he is healthy from this point going forward, and you're hoping it stays that way, but he's healthy and ready to play. The last time he was healthy for a full season, all he did was win the Triple Crown and help his team to a Super Bowl appearance.
All he did.
That's a bet I'm willing to take. I think that's a bet I'm willing to take with the Steelers, especially because it seems like you are that one piece that could push you over the edge to get you into being that upper echelon team in the AFC. So I would say, yeah, take the bet on Cooper Kupp if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep. I agree. And we're going to talk trade compensation here in just a second. But this is, you look at guys, DeAndre Hopkins is the topic of conversation all day long, right? It's DeAndre Hopkins goes to the Kansas City Chiefs for some wild conditional pick. It's a 5th round. If they make the Super Bowl and he plays 60% of the snaps, it becomes a 4th, which means the Tennessee Titans are very confident the Kansas City Chiefs are going to end up in the Super Bowl once again. You look at this with the Pittsburgh Steelers and you say, teams probably wouldn't make that trade. It would have to come with some sort of conditional pick. Everything's a conditional pick these days. But would a team view the Pittsburgh Steelers as something that they could go with the Jets of the AFC North game and Devontae Adams has to be an all-pro for that to go to a 2nd round pick? Can a team look at the Steelers and say those same things? I think with a guy like Cooper Kupp, they can. I believe a guy like Cooper Kupp, if he's healthy, which that would be the conditional, that's why you would make it a conditional 3rd into a 2nd or so on and so forth, is if he stays healthy, yes, the Steelers are a team that you now view as a contender for not just the AFC North, but the AFC in general, that they could find their way to a game against the Kansas City Chiefs, against the Buffalo Bills, against the Baltimore Ravens, and say, or against the Houston Texans, and say they have an opportunity to get there and possibly win it because of what Cooper Kupp brings. That's who Cooper, and I wouldn't say that about a lot of guys. You know, Brandon Ayuk, I think, makes them a contender, and we had that conversation all summer long. Brandon Ayuk makes them a contender. Brandon Ayuk makes them a contender. Devontae Adams made them a contender to a degree. A little bit of, you're hoping that you get Devontae Adams without the issues, and if that's the case, which I don't think anybody expected, you view it and say Devontae Adams probably makes them a contender. I don't know if DeAndre Hopkins made them a contender. Cooper Kupp, healthy and ready to go, makes most teams a contender. Most teams that are in there that are looking, that are one wide receiver away, that is as good as it gets on the market, and the Steelers have an opportunity to go out and get them. Again, quote unquote, absolutely in on Cooper Kupp, and they look at it as a plug and play atmosphere that they can go out and get this guy, bring him in there, are willing to give up more because he is less drama than most wide receivers, especially those who have been available this season, and can come in here with literally no issues. Now let's talk what it would cost and what they could possibly give up to go get Cooper Kupp, because those are all the questions. Those are what come with the statement the Steelers are in. Oh, that's great, but the dude has a $29 million cap hit next year. So is that even feasible for the Pittsburgh Steelers? They have roughly $9 million in salary cap space this year. Is that even feasible for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'll tell you this. Let's break it down here. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they have just over 9. Cooper Kupp's cap hit this season, if they trade him before Sunday, is just over $9 million. But the Los Angeles Rams are willing to take on some of that, according to the Athletics' Diana Rossini. This is where things get very interesting. Next season, the only guaranteed money the Pittsburgh Steelers would have to cough up for Cooper Kupp, no matter what, whether he's on the roster, whether he's off the roster, is $5 million. That is guaranteed. No matter, that is their money that they have to hand Cooper Kupp a year from now. They obviously will hand him much more if they do not restructure his deal, and this contract will be upwards of $20 million plus if they do not restructure a deal before then. But you have to imagine that they're looking at Cooper Kupp and saying, we can get even another year out of you, because at that point you'll be 33. That seems like a good place to end the contract, and then we'll go from there. Then we'll figure some things out. If they do that, the way I look at this is ask the Rams to take on the $5 million, but instead of next year, this year. Take on $5 million of the $9 million cap hit this season, make it 4 and some change, gives the Pittsburgh Steelers just about $5 million. That's not really where they want to be. They want to be closer to 10, but you could still make some wiggle room, and you could make that happen at about $5.5 million with Cooper Kupp. Take on the 5 next year, because chances are you want to keep him anyways. Restructure his deal to add another year before the end of this season and go from there. I view this as a guy that could cost $4.5 million this season. And next year you probably pay closer to 20, but the year after that you pay, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. You push it back, you make it work, and you still have $5 million left. And when it comes to compensation, when it comes to what you're going to give the Los Angeles Rams, I mean, unless I'm alone here, I'd give up a conditional 3rd round pick. And I'd say, I'll give you a conditional 3rd if he plays 60% of the snaps the remainder of the season, because that's the biggest part here is injuries. If he plays 60% of the snaps the rest of the season, plus, I mean, if you want to dumb it down, you could go something along the lines of they make the divisional game in the playoffs. If you don't want to go all the way to the AFC Championship game, if you don't think that the Rams would budge on that, but I would test the waters on the AFC Championship game. I would test that and say, if the Steelers make it to the AFC Championship game and Cooper Kupp plays 60% of the snaps or more, that becomes a 2nd round pick. Because quite frankly, I get it. You want that pick. If Cooper Kupp's the difference between a playoff win and a Super Bowl, that's okay. It's worth the 2nd round pick. You can make that up just fine. I'd be okay with that. I'd ask the Los Angeles Rams to take on $5 million of the Pittsburgh Steelers' $9-point-some million cap hit from Cooper Kupp, and I would give up a conditional 3rd round pick that says, hey, AFC Championship game, if they're willing to budge on that, and 60% of the snaps. And I think they'd take that. Worst case scenario, they dumb it down to the divisional round of the playoffs. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that sounds like a deal to me. I mean, the biggest thing here is the conditional. I mean, we've talked about it. The biggest thing with Kupp is always the health, but when he's healthy, and let's not act like, I did say, the last time he was healthy for a full season, I made the joke, all he did was win the Triple Crown and go to the Super Bowl. But when he was healthy this season, first game of the year, 21 targets, 14 receptions, over 100 yards, and a touchdown in week 1. That's this year. They're saying he's healthy again. If you get that the rest of this season and you're going for a Super Bowl, first of all, I don't care what the draft pick is, but I get why it needs to be something that's a little bit more reasonable. Hence the conditional 3rd. We've seen it in the Hopkins trade. We saw it in the Davante Adams trade. These conditions are all, contingent upon these players playing, right? Davante was coming off a hamstring injury. That's why that was included. You're getting a little bit of safety and security against his injury history with those conditions and with that money coming back from the LA Rams taking that up. So I think that being the deal, if that's something that the Rams are into, especially if you can get it being, the conditions of an AFC Championship game plus percentage of playing time, I think that is in every way, shape, and form a great deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy that, like you mentioned, not only gets you that wide receiver that you've been missing, he raises the bar of your offense substantially. Yeah. These other receivers might have raised the bar, but not as substantially as getting a Cooper Kupp would have.
No, a healthy Cooper Kupp is hard to come by. Like, you don't just get a healthy Cooper Kupp. And if we're going to be more honest about the entire landscape of this, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Williams fits into this conversation. Davante Adams was probably the closest out of all of them. Nobody fits the Steelers offense as well as Cooper Kupp would fit the Steelers offense. He does it. He works the middle of the field perfectly. He is a great route runner who could play inside and outside. That's what the Steelers are looking for. And he's the most reliable set of hands who is always open. That's what you need. You need somebody else outside of George Pickens that you say, all right, read one is a deep ball to George. Read 2 was Cooper Kupp 15 yards down the field with nobody around him. Sounds good to me. I just feel like nobody fits the Steelers offense like Cooper Kupp does. Nobody would come in here and have the impact that Cooper Kupp could have if he's healthy. And I believe people will say the Rams wouldn't budge on a third for a condition. Yes, they would. That is what the NFL landscape is going to be over the next year or so, is everybody will get traded in their early to mid 30s for a conditional pick that gets a team what they want. You know, the Raiders will get a second round pick if Devontae Adams is an all-pro, or the Jets make the AFC Championship game. The Kansas City Chiefs make the Super Bowl and DeAndre Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. Cool. That becomes a second as well. That's what will happen, is we will set up things where, I'm willing to give you this, but if this doesn't work out, I'm not going to give you a second round pick. I will give you a third round pick to where if this does work out, because that's what is happening. You are not watching the Chiefs trade players. You are not watching the Bills trade players, the Texans, the Ravens, the Steelers. You are watching the Titans. You are watching the Rams. You are watching the Raiders. You are watching these teams where the season is over, trade away their best assets and saying, yeah, there's a good chance that they go far, and I don't care if they make the Super Bowl because we are not going to. So that's great. If it works out in your favor, cool. And that's how the Rams would view this, is we have one win this season. We are not good. Our quarterback is in trade talks with everybody, and we might be looking to just clean house because we did it. We won a Super Bowl. We've done these things. We've had great success with these players. At some point, we have to rebuild, and it feels like that rebuild is coming now. Let me ask you this hypothetical here. Mike Williams for a 7th round pick and a $2 million cap hit, or Cooper Kupp for a conditional 3rd round pick that turns into a second with the layout that we just went over.
Mike Williams does help the Steelers. He does. Not by much, but he does. But what are we doing here? We're gunning for a Super Bowl. I'm taking Cooper Kupp, and the Rams a couple of years ago said, F them kids, and traded away all of their picks. I think you need to take a little bit out of the Rams playbook, not just in what they did a couple of years ago to go to the Super Bowl, but also take their wide receiver as well, because I think he elevates you much more than a Mike Williams does. And I agree with you. I think they need him much more than they need a big, deep threat in Mike Williams. I think that unlocks more of the Steelers offense.
Yeah, I fully agree. Fully agree. Let me toss another one out there because we just got one here from Phantom XTV. Seahawks trading DK or Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf for a straight up 2nd round pick, or Cooper Kupp for a conditional 3rd round pick. Much less cap space.
There's also injury questions around DK Metcalf right now too. I mean, the fall he took on Sunday did not look good, but again, I'd have to look at the contract numbers, but I still think
high.
It's high. I still think you need what Cooper Kupp brings more than you need what DK Metcalf brings. Don't get me wrong. Both tremendous wide receivers, and I would take DK over Mike Williams in a heartbeat. Yeah, I would still probably lean towards Cooper Kupp, because if you're getting fully healthy, either of them, I want Cooper Kupp in this offense.
I think the one, and I mean, I'm not going to say DK Metcalf is in a much better spot in his career right now. Than Cooper Kupp is. Like, you have to acknowledge that. But DK Metcalf and George Pickens are essentially the same player. And Cooper Kupp adds a much different element to this football team that I don't think any other wide receiver on the market does bring at this point. Cooper Kupp, the Steelers are absolutely in on him. We'll see what happens. I'll ask you this. If Cooper Kupp comes to Pittsburgh, Super Bowl contender, and in front of or behind who?
In front of or behind? Oh, okay. I thought you were going with the quarterback question there for a second. I was like, what do you mean? But yeah, no, I think if you get Cooper Kupp and he remains healthy, you are a Super Bowl contender. And I think that you're still probably behind the Kansas City Chiefs, because I don't know how they keep winning. And if they hit their stride, they're going to be extremely hard to beat. I would put the Texans up there as well. After I've kind of gone back and watched them a little bit more, I would put the Texans up there as well. Then I would put the Steelers in that pool for that number 3 spot behind, with the Bills, with the Ravens. I think they're all in about that same area.
I agree. And to be very honest, Russell Wilson's expertise, or we could say it, he's been there twice, expertise in the playoffs, especially deep into the playoffs, could possibly give the Steelers the edge over the Texans, simply because that plays a significant role in the postseason. And I think CJ Stroud is the future of the NFL. You find yourself in an instance where you're at Acrisure Stadium and that place is rocking. How are you going to handle it? You know, you going to handle it well? Are you going to look at TJ Watt and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm screwed"? You know, and I think Russ could give you a little bit of an upper hand. But I agree. Top 3, easy. Certainly above the Ravens. Probably very close to the Bills and the Texans, and then obviously trailing the Chiefs / the refs. But you know, it depends on who you get and the time of day and really where the moon is, and you know, the flags, whether they come out,
and who's in attendance. Specifically one person who's in attendance. Cooper Kupp, the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely in on him. We'll have more information throughout the week. This is a continuing story. This is something we will dive into. The Pittsburgh Steelers could use him, and I'd be very excited to welcome Cooper Kupp to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because no drama, great hands, future Hall of Famer, former Triple Crown. I mean, it does not get any better than Cooper Kupp with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's also Wednesday. The other half of Wednesday is power rankings, and then we're going to answer all your questions. And I know there are going to be a boatload of Cooper Kupp questions, a boatload of wide receiver trade questions, and I cannot wait to answer them. We will make sure we answer all of those ones first before we get into anything else. We're going to dive into power rankings, but first, we got a quick word from our boys over at DraftKings. There's this chill in the air. The leaves are hitting the ground, and football is every single weekend. And that, my friends, is what fall is all about. You can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners, DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 instantly get $200 in bonus bets. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up using my promo code ALLSTEELERS, and guess what? The crown is yours. That's $200 in bonus bets instantly. You could stay in on the action and use that $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings, because DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You could still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who use my promo code ALLSTEELERS and bet just $5 on any wager get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSTEELERS only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Shout out our boys over at DraftKings. Can you pull up the comment about Chris Carter? Yeah, that's at the very top, so I can definitely do that.
Shout out to
Cody Silva. Shout out to Cody Silva, who says, Noah, you should ask Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers how to speed up your advertising. He talks like an auctioneer. Does he talk that fast in person?
He does not talk that fast in person, but I cannot wait to let him know that this made its way to All Steelers Talk today. I'm thrilled about that. That's a fun comment of the day so far, I would say. That is hilarious. And you're spot on, because every time I'm on Locked On, all I think about is I'm like, oh, we're doing another ad break. And then he's back. I'm like, all right, I'm back. I didn't even take a sip of water. What are we doing here? And he flies through him. He gets him there. He gets him going. So shout out to my boy, Chris. All right. It is Wednesday, which means we're doing our power rankings. Week 8, Pittsburgh Steelers, New York Giants. And man, we got some shakeups today. This is not old school, normal, boring, same top 3. Nothing ever changes with Noah and these power rankings. Not this week. Week 8's different, and it's coming at you hot. Nick, I'm excited. I'm going to ask you to hold off on this graphic until we get to number 1, please. And we're going to start with number 5. He played 1 game for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, and in that 1 game, well, he took the Pittsburgh Steelers from, pretty good, okay, 4-2, feeling good. Maybe you should start Justin Fields, to Mike Tomlin smiling right at Brandon Marshall and going, that's why I'm highly compensated. Thank you. And getting up and leaving. Number 5 is none other than Dangerous Russellmania, Mr. Unlimited himself. Russell Wilson comes in here at number 5. This is the easiest choice I could have made. If we are going to be very honest, this is the easiest number 5 that could have made its way onto the list. Russell Wilson came in here. He had about 6 bad passes, and then instantly the Steelers offense was 100 times better. Will it last? I have no idea, but it looked real good against the New York Jets, and this team, they were rolling. They had Najee Harris cheesing afterwards. They had George Pickens smiling. They had everybody feeling real good about where this wealth is coming from and how everybody is eating within this offense. And it all starts with the quarterback. We are having Super Bowl level conversations about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that could all go to waste on Monday. Who knows? But right now things are very good. And it is largely in part to number 3, the man himself, Danger Russ. Did you see Permanis? Did you see Permanis came out with the sandwich?
I did see the Danger Russ sandwich, and I'm going to be in Pittsburgh in a couple weeks, and I'm definitely going to get that sandwich.
You should try that with the last night. I had the Rusty milkshake, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I might go get that with the Dangerous and potentially just have great combination. You're not doing anything for the rest of the evening after that, and you are going to have some serious heartburn in the middle of the night. But besides that, worth it. So I will let everybody know. Number 5, Dangerous Russell Wilson. Number 4, sliding back 1, and it is no credit to him. I mean, he continues to dominate this season. He is fighting Father Time, and man, he is winning big time. That is number 97, Cam Hayward. I mean, you're batting passes down left and right. This is no contest. Cam Hayward remains unbeatable by the age of football. I mean, you look at what players do nowadays, and yeah, they're good. But by 35, we're talking like Ndamukong Suh coming back with 3 games left in the season, playing 15 snaps a game so that he can make a playoff run with like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cam Hayward's playing every snap for the Pittsburgh Steelers, absolutely dominating, walking off the field nimble and feeling real good about it. This dude is if his career ends and nobody talks about the longevity of what he was able to do and how good he was able to play as long as he did it, I mean, we are doing him a huge disservice. Cam Hayward comes in at number 4 simply because number 3, is on a tear right now. And we didn't have any offensive guys for 2 full weeks. 2 weeks, no offensive players for the Pittsburgh Steelers in our top 5 power rankings. We got 2 of them this week, and it is not anybody else other than number 22 himself. Najee Harris is an absolute animal right now, and he is doing things that only classic Najee Harris is able to do. He seems faster. He seems more agile. He seems a little bit swifter on the feet. Najee Harris is making people miss. He's running people over, and he's finding holes. He hasn't done any of that for weeks at a time throughout the last couple of years. And I don't know if he is now just only adapting to the Arthur Smith offense. I don't know if defenses are realizing, look, we could stop the run all day. The Steelers are going to beat us with the pass. So now they have to adjust, and it's hurting or helping the Steelers run offense. I have no idea. What I do know is that Najee Harris went over 100 yards 2 weeks in a row and looks like the most slept-on player in the AFC North. Everybody wants to talk about Derrick Henry. Everybody wants to talk about the return of Nick Chubb. Why are we not talking about Najee Harris? The dude is a freak. He deserves all the recognition right now, and I will put him at number 3, and I will feel very good about the Pittsburgh Steelers running game behind number 22, Najee Harris. Before we dive into the top 2, I'll ask you your opinion on these 3. Russell Wilson at 5, Cam Hayward at 4, and Najee Harris at number 2. A big change to our top 5 power rankings in week 8.
Yeah, I'm loving the offense. Two back-to-back weeks with 30 points. It would be disgraceful. Not disgraceful. It would be, what's the word I'm looking
You're
for?
close.
It
Disgraceful is
would be
not a bad word.
disgraceful, but it would also be just kind of rude to not put any offensive players in here. After
Agreed.
32 points, then 37 points. I believe it was a 400 total yard game on Sunday night for Arthur Smith's offense. So I'm glad that there's some offensive flair in here. I'm glad that there's a little bit of offensive flavor. And I like the fact that Najee Harris is at number 3 because he has been, you mentioned agile, you mentioned quick, you mentioned he's been making people miss. He's running angry too. And that's when Najee Harris is at his best, is when he's running angry. There's been a couple of those runs where he's getting so much steam going that he's just bouncing off of defenders because they just can't help but bounce back 5 yards after coming into contact with 22. So I love that Najee's bumping up again. Nothing wrong with Cam Hayward the way he's been performing, but Najee has just been at that other level that he deserves to go from unranked, not even honorable mention, to jumping in there at number 3. So I like Najee up there. I like Russell Wilson up there as well. Best quarterback play we've seen since Ben retired on Sunday in a single game performance. So yeah, I think it's warranted as well, especially considering that's the base. That is game 1, my friends. What happens in game 2 against the Giants? What happens in the back half of the season when the lights get bright? Does Dangerous get brighter too? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm liking the fact that he's debuting here at number 5. So I like your list so far, and I'm intrigued to see the reaction for the remainder of the list. So let's just get to it right now.
I am as well. We have a massive change up here with number 2 and number 1. Coming in at number 2, one of the greatest Pittsburgh Steelers of all time. A guy who is the heart and soul of not just this defense, but this franchise as a whole. The most notable man in Pittsburgh. I mean, right alongside. We have hit right alongside Sidney Crosby. They are 1 and 2 right there when you come to Pittsburgh athletes and their impact on the teams that they are a part of. And all season, I mean, it's the easiest number 1 in the book until somebody else takes it. And TJ Watt, my friend, is having one unbelievable season, and nobody take number 2 as a shot, a stab, a downgrade, nothing. This is simply number 1 making way too much noise not to be number 1. But number 2, my friend, is TJ Watt, following the one, the only 51 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit, 1 fumble recovery, 1 forced fumble, 3 pass deflections, and 1 interception. And the man stealing everybody's hearts in Pittsburgh because he is an absolute freak. And I do not know how he was not signed sooner than he was. And I have no idea how none of us knew who this guy was before he showed up in Pittsburgh and he had to be convinced, or everybody had to convince him or you or us who this guy was and that he was going to make an impact, that he was the better move than Justin Simmons and Jamal Adams and everybody else who went on a red hot free agency market, that somehow the Pittsburgh Steelers got the best safety signing of the entire offseason, and quite frankly, possibly the best offseason signing on the defensive side of the football in general. Coming in at number 1, no other than DeShon Elliott, surpassing TJ Watt just by 1, because quite frankly, if we're going to be honest, there is no player in Pittsburgh who is playing better right now than DeShon Elliott on a consistent basis. TJ Watt is getting taken out of games. Sometimes he is making massive impacts. At other times, DeShon Elliott is in on every tackle. He is talking more smack than anybody. He is making an impact. He is flying around. He is hitting dudes. And you will be shocked how many times I hear from people throughout the week, yeah, DeShon is just a freak. He is a monster. This dude is the perfect Pittsburgh Steeler. And I mean, I'm upset. The only thing that makes me upset about DeShon Elliott is that the Pittsburgh Steelers had to wait until he was 26 to get him here. Because if this dude was here from the jump, him and Minkah Fitzpatrick would have done crazy things the last couple of years. Him and TJ and Cam and Minkah would all be one big group right now of these are the most dominant players in Pittsburgh. And it's okay, he's late to the party, but he's still going to make his impact. I'll ask you, Deshaun Elliott, number 1, TJ Watt, number 2. Am I wrong here? Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong, especially coming off of a week. This is a week-to-week thing where listen, TJ could go off against the Giants. They gave up 8 sacks last week. I think that you can try to game plan for TJ Watt, but if you're giving up 8 sacks, TJ's going to eat a little bit. He can be right back up there in the number 1 next week. Good. But last week he had 1 tackle, which listen, a lot of that was scheming. A lot of that was game planning, and they're going to do that to TJ Watt. Because if you're going to pick one player to take out of the Steelers defense, you're going to try to take out TJ Watt. But that means other people have to step up, and nobody has stepped up more consistently than Deshaun Elliott. So I love the fact that you got D. Elliott here, as Mike Tomlin calls him. I like that you're talking about TJ Watt and the lengths and the ways of he's right up there next to Sidney Crosby. I mean, it sounds like an absolutely awful law firm, but Sidney Skeens and Watt sounds like a tremendous trio for the city of Pittsburgh going forward. But I like your list. I like it coming off of a game like this. I love the fact that there's some offensive flair to it, but I don't think there's any other direction you could have gone than Deshaun Elliott as your number 1.
Nope. No, you cannot. And if there is a stat that I wish we had, that I wish somewhere, somehow you were able to find, it was how many tackles does Deshaun Elliott come up with where the guy gains less than 2 yards? Because those don't count as tackles for loss. But there are countless times, so many times a game, where you are looking at Deshaun Elliott make a tackle a yard past the line of scrimmage from a pass that he probably wasn't even covering. He's just there making plays. Deshaun Elliott is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary, right next to Joey Porter Jr., right next to Minkah Fitzpatrick, hopefully right next to Dante Jackson, and potentially right next to Beanie Bishop, who should be an honorable mention. He is not going to make the top 5 simply because, and shout out to Redman here. I mean, I want to make him an honorable mention, but we'll make him an honorable mention for this week alone, because the grand scheme of things, the whole picture is not the prettiest right now. But that one game was phenomenal. And Beanie Bishop showed everybody exactly why Beanie Bishop deserves to be in Pittsburgh, and exactly why he's the starter, and exactly why people should be super excited about the future of Beanie Bishop. And he's going to get his football signed by Aaron Rodgers, which is even cooler. That is my list. Russell Wilson, Cam Hayward, Najee Harris, TJ Watt, Deshaun Elliott, and we'll put an honorable mention for week 7. And week 7 alone, Beanie Bishop. Feeling good. Love the switch up. Excited about the switch up. And that just means that next week, there's got to be more change, right? There's got to be more coming. And maybe at some point, Cooper Kupp finds his way onto these power rankings, and we got a whole new name to start talking about in the city of Pittsburgh with these power rankings. That was awesome. I appreciate everybody for tuning in for this. This has been a blast. With that said, Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. We got questions, and we got all of them. We will end this show the way we do every single day, and that is by answering as many questions as we possibly can. So if you guys have them, toss them in the chat. We will get to as many as we can before we head out of here. Nick, what do we got?
Yeah, let's start with Cody Silva, who led us off with a question earlier. Says, Noah, could Cam Hayward get a sneaky interception this game? What do you guys think of Adams' face last week when GP caught that circus catch?
I'll start with the Adams face. It was hilarious. It made me instantly think of Devontae Adams talking about George Pickens doing George Pickens things, like just, that famous quote. That's what I thought of instantly, of him just being like, what are we doing here? Like, what? That shouldn't happen. That's what I thought of. It was hilarious. Cam Hayward could definitely get a sneaky interception. There are a few people and this is TJ Watt included. There are a few people in the NFL who are as good as batting balls down at the line of scrimmage as Cam Hayward. And you could ask any quarterback in Pittsburgh. The first time it happens, I watch them all. They go, how did that happen? And then the second time it happened, they're just like, all right, dude, stop it. Just stop. So Cam Hayward I'm hoping he gets another one. He has one interception on his career. And surprisingly enough, it didn't come as a batted ball at the line of scrimmage. It came as a tip pass that he dove and caught against the Giants. So shout out Cam.
Let's go over to Chris, who says, why not go for both Williams and Cooper Kupp? We can afford and could use both.
Okay. So I don't think you could, I don't think you really need both. I get the concept of this, but where it becomes an issue is if you go get Cooper Kupp and it works out the way that I say that the Steelers should try to make it work out, which they don't listen to me, but if they did, you're looking at just about $4.5 million in cap space available. If you go get Mike Williams, that's another 2 and change. So you're looking at about $2 million in available cap space. That leaves you literally nothing to do for the rest of the season. So if somebody goes down, you are in trouble, and injuries always happen. You want $6 to $10 million in available cap space because the league minimum is like 1.5 roughly, depending on the player. So you want that space. You want those guys to be available. You want to be able to sign guys like CJ Henderson to your active roster without having to worry about it. That's why you do that kind of stuff. You need that cap space. You need that safety blanket. You can't go get both of these and have the safety blanket the rest of the season.
Let's go over to the Fields is for the Pickens, who had a comment on the Cooper Kupp discussion. Super Bowl champ, vet leadership for wide receivers, no contest. Cooper Kupp is and should be the top option.
He very much so should, where we sit here right now. I mean, if you told me, think of how wild the wide receiver, this is the best year the Pittsburgh Steelers could possibly be involved in a wide receiver market. And they are never involved in a wide receiver market. So to finally make that leap and say, yeah, screw it, let's just see what happens out there. Brandon Ayuk, Devontae Adams, Mike Williams, and then Cooper Kupp. I mean, you couldn't get any better. And there are rumors floating around about people calling about Garrett Wilson. I have been told the Steelers were one of those teams, and I'm sure other teams will emerge as well. It's a wild time for some wide receivers. And if you somehow land Cooper Kupp, I mean, you talk about failing upwards, my friends. That's as good as it gets right there. It's as good as it gets.
Let's go over to Sean Hickey, and I'm going to let you know this is going to be a yes or no question. You don't need to call any names. But Sean says, love the show. Do you have any Steelers who watch the show?
I will say there are a couple of players that I do know watch the show, and they let it be known whenever I do something like leave them out of power rankings. They definitely most certainly let me know. But I will keep them anonymous just simply because I don't want them to, beat me up or something. I mean, like, stop watching the show, come up to me because they're massive human beings and just, play games and scare me tomorrow. So we'll just leave this one as a yes. And I'm very grateful for all of them. And if they are watching right now, don't kill me tomorrow.
Let's go over to Steven, who it's not Tuesday, but this could be an overreaction. Says this defense will be as historical as the Steel Curtain. You got to win a Super Bowl for that.
Yeah, that is a tough bar to meet there. It doesn't count if you don't win a Super Bowl. None of it counts if you don't win a Super Bowl. I mean, at the end of the day, it just doesn't. You could go back to the Duck Hodges year. That defense was unstoppable. Didn't even make the playoffs. So it doesn't count. Nobody's going to remember them. You could go back. I mean, the year that they lost to Green Bay was the best defense of the Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin Super Bowl era. And that was the best one, but nobody's going to remember it because they didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl. So everybody will remember that. You got to win the Super Bowl. That's the only way you could be included in this conversation. They have the makings. To not act like they don't have the makings. But again, it all comes down to this Super Bowl, and can you pull it off?
Let's go over to Steven's second question, which is, can our offensive line stand up to the pass rush of the New York Giants, or will Russ be in trouble? And if the pocket does collapse during the game, will Tomlin put Fields in because he has that's his cup of tea, excuse me?
No, he won't put Fields in. I'm also not super worried about the Giants pass rush. They do have a pass rush, but the Jets had a pass rush as well, and a pretty good one. It's definitely a challenge for Ryan McCollum. This is a massive challenge, but I would imagine guys like Isaac Seumalo and Mason McCormick have their hand in the pile in trying to stop Dexter Lawrence as well. Besides that, there are names. I trust Dan Moore. I hope Broderick Jones plays well, but Broderick Jones did enough against Will McDonald where you weren't terrified for Russell Wilson. So the answer to the second part of this is no. At no point this season will the Steelers change quarterbacks back to Justin Fields unless it is a dire situation or if Russ is hurt. But besides that, they're just going to let it rock. And I would imagine they move the pocket a little bit, try to get Dexter Lawrence to be mobile, and he's not going to be super mobile, and they'll try to get that to work to avoid strong pass rushes up the middle for Russ.
All I'm going to say is this: 1 sack allowed last week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
After everything we said, after everything that was worried about, Only 1 sack. Again, 1 week, but returns are good.
There has to be a ton of credit given to Arthur Smith for that, because if you go back and watch, and I'm not like the offensive and defensive line, I'm not the greatest at analyzing, but they moved the pocket so much, and it helped. It worked very well, and I would imagine they do it again. That's credit to Arthur Smith. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to keep his quarterback safe.
Let's go over to 8Jacks. Appreciate you as always. Says, how did you get your foot in the door with sports media? Did you have to get a journalism degree?
Did go to school to get a journalism degree. Me and Nick graduated together, actually. Shout out to Point Park University. They just lost to the University of Pittsburgh in basketball last night, but we don't have to talk about that. From there, just kept grinding, my friend. And I worked for free for a long time before we ended up here. So it was a long journey, but I'm very grateful for it. But started with Point Park and a degree and just working, just found blogs and spots online and local newspapers that would let me write. And I just kept it trucking as much as I could. I wrote as much as I possibly could every single day.
Let's go over to the Fields is for the pick and says, is there damage to striking out in the wide receiver market?
Depends on the way you strike out. If you strike out and you don't get anybody, the damage is that you didn't get anybody in that Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin round out your wide receiver 2 and 3, which is not what you're looking for. If you strike out and go get a Cooper Kupp and he, isn't able to play half the season and it's a wasted 3rd round pick, that stinks. But at the same time, your current 3rd round pick is inactive every single week except for 5 plays a week ago. So is it like you're really missing out that much? I don't know. Long term, probably. Short term, probably not really. There is damage depending on the trade. If you go out and make a big giant trade and give up a 2nd round pick for Cooper Kupp or whoever, and it doesn't work out, that's a massive L, and you've now lost a really meaningful draft pick, a Zach Frazier style draft pick, a Pat Freiermuth style a George Pickens style draft pick. If it's anything lower, the damage is less.
Let's go over to Fear the Beard Collectibles that says, did you both grow up Steelers fans?
I hope the Fear the Beard has like some cool merch, dude. If you got some cool merch, I like cool merch. You got a good logo. Did you grow up a Steelers fan? I did grow up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan over in good old Scranton, Pennsylvania. Grew up on Hines Ward, James Harrison, Troy Polamalu, and my hair looked much worse than his, but I tried to make it look like Troy's. And I know Nick did the same. Without that
I did not try to make my hair look like Troy Polamalu's. It never would, and it never will, to be completely honest. But I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So definitely both been following this team for a lot longer than we probably should have.
Yes.
Let's go over to William Cowan, who says, is it possible we sign Kupp today or tomorrow and he still plays Monday night?
Look, I can't guarantee anything, and I will never be the guy that guarantees anything. Well, because, you just don't know. I'm not in the room with Mike Tomlin. I don't make these final decisions. But what I was told, and I was told on the phone, use this quote. And I said, all right, tell me the quote. And you could ask my wife. I texted it to her because I said, I need to write this down as fast as possible, and your name is up on my phone. Plug and play. So maybe that means he shows up Friday, he plays Monday. Maybe it means it shows up Saturday and he plays next week. Who knows? But plug and play was the words that were used to me. So take that as you will. Bank on that as you will.
A YouTube user would like to know, when is the trade deadline, by the way?
That's an awesome username. The trade deadline is November 5th. Big day for the country. Bigger day for the NFL. So, shout out. Keep your eyes on the good part of Twitter. It's probably way less dramatic, and it probably get you less aggravated, if we're going to be honest.
That'll be an interesting day for Overreaction Tuesday. Let's go over to Demetrius Barr.
Yes.
Who says, if not Cooper Kupp, then who should the Steelers go after next?
Mike Williams would be my call. He just feels like the most realistic name that's after that. And at this point, you just got to land somebody. Mike Williams would be the call. 7th round pick, 6th round pick. Who cares? Give it up for him. Take on the $2 million cap hit. You don't have to adjust any salaries. He's essentially a rental. I think he has like potential to be Allen Robinson, when he was in Pittsburgh, but I also think he has potential to be more than that. So you're just taking a flyer on him and hoping for the best. That's who I would go after next. And in that conversation, I would probably bring up Garrett Wilson like 5 times just to see. And then I would see again, and maybe one more time before we sign the papers, just to see what's going on.
Let's go over to Sean LaRock, who says, I was asking this as an overreaction Tuesday, but I'll ask again today. How do you both feel about the Steelers finishing 12-5?
I don't think that's an overreaction. I don't think that's an overreaction. 12-5 is a good record where you stand right. I mean, I have them at 10 wins. Nick had them at 11 wins. I think it changed to
You went to 11.
10.
I went to 10.
Yeah. We switched them at one point. I think one more win is very capable. I think, Kansas City, my biggest part of this, my biggest factor in this conversation is that nobody goes undefeated in the NFL. And you have to imagine the Chiefs are going to lose eventually. So let them keep winning, because at some point they're going to lose, and maybe that's Pittsburgh. So I could see 12 wins being a thing since he's not that good right now. I mean, you got to hope that the Browns fall off by the time you play them with the new quarterback, and I think that's possible. And then Baltimore is Baltimore, and they play the Steelers the same way every single time. I don't know if Derrick Henry makes a difference, but I feel like the AFC North could be in the Steelers' hands, which could push them to 12-5.
Yeah, they'd have to go 7-3 from here on out. And honestly, the biggest thing you mentioned there, the Bengals and the Browns being a lot less strong than we expected them to be, makes that back half of the schedule look a lot less daunting than it did previously. Still not great, but a lot less daunting than it was previously. Yes. Let's go over to Christopher, who says, what number would Cooper Kupp wear if he came to the Steelers? Currently rocking the 10, but so too is the rookie, the phantom, Roman Wilson.
Do you think Roman could be bought? Do you think Cooper could buy it off of Roman?
Not that Cooper doesn't make enough money. He probably has enough that Roman would be willing to do that. But we talked about it when we were discussing Davante Adams, because he couldn't get 17, I don't think. 18's available.
18's available. 18's available. 18 wouldn't be bad. I could see Cooper Kupp in 18. I could see Cooper Kupp in 18. Was he always 10 in the NFL?
Yes, I believe so.
I could see Roman being sold. I could see Roman being offered like $1 million and being like, yeah, dude, I'm 22 years old. Sure. Thanks. I'm not playing anyways. Here you go. Take 10. I don't know. I would guess that he buys it off of Roman. If not, I could see an 18. I think 12 is available. I could see one of those numbers.
Let's go over to Brandon, who says, do you guys think if Najee keeps doing his thing, the Steelers find a way to keep him after this year?
Nope. I will not change this stance.
I will not, because this is the thing you've been most hard pressed on. I keep bringing him up because I want to know if you're going to stick true to this.
I will not change my stance on the Najee Harris thing. And it's nothing against Najee. It works out one of two ways for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And right now it's working out the way that is in favor of Najee Harris. And then he's going to run himself out of Pittsburgh. He's going to cost too much money in free agency, and the Steelers are not going to want to sign him. So he's either going to be bad enough by the end of the year that the Steelers don't want to keep him, or he's going to be too good and he's going to understand that he's going to go get the bag somewhere in free agency. Right now he's going to get the bag. So shout out to Najee, but he will not be in Pittsburgh next year.
Let's go over to Sean LaRock, who says, with Cordero Patterson expected to return, do you think that pushes Jalen back to running back 3? And if not, how do you see this working out with Cordero coming back and the Steelers potentially having 3 healthy backs for the first time all season?
Yeah, I just to clarify something, and this is nothing against you, Sean. Jalen was beat up. He was dealing with a hamstring injury and then a knee injury. That's the only reason Cordero was taking more reps than him. It had nothing to do with Jalen being running back 3. He was very clearly running back 2 with Cordero being running back 3, but Cordero was healthy. Jalen was not. So they were going to give it to Cordero more than Jalen so that Jalen could be around long term. I don't think anything changed. I think you see a lot of Najee, a little bit of Jalen, and maybe a little bit of Cordero, but it'll be a very sprinkled in Cordero Patterson when needed. I don't think much changes at all. You're going to ride Najee because he is the hot hand right now, and you're going to let Jalen do his thing behind him because Jalen also had a good game and still looks very good. And then you're going to use Cordero Patterson as again, like a little sprinkle in flash out there that you could work with. On top of that, he's here to be a kick returner. They're going to look for that, and they want to keep him healthy long term. So it won't be a bunch of carries right off the bat.
Shout out to Robson, and we guessed correctly because Cooper Kupp has worn a different number, was number 18 in his first year with the Rams.
I felt like he switched from 18. 18 could be the number. He could go to 18 again. I could see that.
Let's go over to Macaroni Salad, who says, what's the deal with Roman Wilson? Speaking of Roman, Kaboli says he looks great in practice. What's he not doing for Mike Tomlin to use him?
I don't know. You have to ask Mike Tomlin. And when you do ask Mike Tomlin, he just says that he's got to continue to be healthy, which I agree. Last week that's what happened. Last week he was going to play more and then he got hurt and all of a sudden he wasn't going to play at all. So he was on course to continue to ramp this up. He did not. And because of that, he missed the game. So I don't know where you go from here. To be very honest, I have no guesses with Roman Wilson because I don't imagine he's active in week 8 against the Giants. And when he's active again, I don't know. But he does look like the third best wide receiver. He looks totally fine out there. It's just a Mike Tomlin preference. I don't know what it is, On the outside looking in, it's easy to say Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin aren't doing enough, and you should put Roman out there. On the inside, there's got to be something holding them back schematically or something that is saying he should be the 4th or the 5th wide receiver on the field.
Let's jump down to the fields. Is for the Pickens, who says Philadelphia had 8 sacks against the Giants last week. How many do the Steelers end up getting?
Yeah, I would imagine a lot. Now, Alex Highsmith being back plays a huge role into this. Larry Ogunjobi being healthy and Keanu Benton being healthy plays a huge role into this. I could see a lot. I could see 6-7 sacks on this game for the Steelers against the Giants. I mean, it's especially with Andrew Thomas out. You got to go back and there's got to be a blooper reel somewhere. At one point in that game, I felt so bad for Daniel Jones because I watched most of the game and he would literally snap the football. And by the time he took 2 steps, there are 3 guys there. And I'm like, dude, this is not Daniel Jones might be phenomenal. His offensive line is so bad. So, I mean, a lot. It's going to be a lot. I feel bad for Daniel Jones, man. I just hope he stays healthy.
Let's go over to Territorio Steeler, who says, hey, Noah and Nick, why are we so excited for a 31-year-old wide receiver with a huge injury risk? What happens if he gets injured and we go back to where we are now?
He gets injured and you're back to where you are now. That's what conditional picks are built for. Essentially, if you give up a 3rd-round pick, you have to take some risk. All trades come with risk, every single one of them. And sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. You could ease that by saying, here's a conditional, and we'll start with a 3rd. If it works out in our favor, it'll go to a 2nd. That's great for the Steelers, and I think a 3rd-round pick is worth a risk for a guy with the upside of Cooper Kupp, because that's what you're trading for, essentially, is the upside. I agree with you. There are injury risks, some big ones, and that has to be acknowledged, and that's a concern of everybody's, but it's the risk reward. And right now you could trade a 6th or a 5th or a 7th round pick for Mike Williams and have a very, very small reward, very small. And the risk reward is very, very limited. Or you could take a shot in the dark and say, Cooper Kupp, come to Pittsburgh. Let's see if it works out. And the risk reward might be higher. But that risk is a 3rd round risk, which is high, but not the highest. The reward is massive because if it works out in your favor, you have a guy who's a future Hall of Famer and still has a ton left on his plate. So I just think, all trades come with risk. It's about the risk reward factor, and Cooper Kupp's got a pretty high reward factor behind him.
Let's go over to Carson. Appreciate you as always. Says 2nd time catching the end of the stream from LA. Hey. You could send us Cooper. We'd appreciate that. Says, hope you guys are doing good. Is Warren the future running back 1, or is it going to be a draft pick?
I don't know. I don't know. I had a guess that it was Warren at the beginning of the season. Where we stand now, I would imagine Jaylen Warren comes back to Pittsburgh and they bring him back and they keep him and then they add somebody else. I would imagine it's a very split backfield next year. It's Nick Singletary. Did I get that name right? Penn State. Singleton. I'll never get it right. It's a Ashton Genty, and then it's a Jalen Warren as the other one. And did I get that wrong too?
No, you got Genty right. Just
there we go.
Thinking of Ashton Genty in this offense is let's just
scary.
say, yeah, it's a scary thought. It's a scary
Especially
thought in
if
a
Cooper
good way.
Kupp shows up, especially if Cooper Kupp.
If you get Cooper Kupp as well.
Yes. So I would imagine it's a split. They'd probably battle it out depending on where the running back gets drafted. It would most likely be Warren as the running back 1, and then somebody else as running back 2. But it would vary more than Najee, Jalen as to who gets more touches.
All right, we got 2 more here. Let's go to Captain America, aka Chris Evans, in the comment section here. Says, do you think TJ Watt's low sack count is due to the amazing defense around him, or is it just teams doing a better job at chipping him off the block?
Both. It's definitely both. Offenses are preparing so much for this pass rush that they are adjusting their entire game plan to make sure that they get the ball out faster than TJ Watt can get there. At the same time, if you go back and you watch, TJ is getting chipped on every single play. So he's already fighting from behind, trying to get out there. They understand who TJ is and what he's trying to do. So we're going to talk. If he finishes with 15 to 20 sacks this season, a couple of forced fumbles and so on and so forth, and he loses somehow Defensive Player of the Year, I would love to see somebody try to make the double team chip argument this year, because it's every single play. I watched TJ get chipped by 2 guys against the Jets on the same play. He got chipped by the tight end, and as the tight end broke out, the running back ran past him and chipped him. And I said, "What? You just sending the whole crew there?" Like he's got limited chances. So it's very much so both. It's very much so both.
All right, let's finish it off with this one from William, who's been asking all day, wants to know, Noah, we want to see you rock some lamb chops whenever you do the stash. Any chance we see that?
I said I'm going to bring out the mutton chops instead of the beard yesterday to my dad, and he's not a fan. He's not a fan. I'll say this, guys. You got to know how much I love Alia, because I have told the wife that this is happening. She is not happy. She's very, very unhappy, actually. And it's her birthday on Saturday. First birthday since we've been married. And I'm about to break out the ugliest thing of all time that she hates. She hates the mustache. Hates the mustache. So if I don't make it to year 2, guys, okay, just know I'm doing this for you, for all of you. But I don't think we're going mutton chops. I think we're gonna, or lamb chops. They call lamb chops? They call mutton chops.
I've heard mutton chops, but I wanted to go with what William called them.
Yeah. I mean, it could be different. I'm gonna ask my barber. Maybe we'll just get both. I'll see. You can't do it because you'd have to shave this first before this. But we'll take progress pics and we'll share them on the pod, potentially, depending on how ugly they are. We'll figure it out.
Alrighty. That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. You can find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully with more updates revolving Cooper Kupp and a potential trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as all of the practice reports and where Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Najee Harris, and company are headed for Monday Night Football with the New York Giants. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.